Hi, my name is Malu. I mostly do videography and writing. So I do directing, art directing, editing, and a bunch of different things for those. And for my writing, I do poetry, and I also do other artistic things just in the hobby. I do ballet and singing. I started doing video like 4 years ago when I started doing YouTube videos because I always wanted to be a YouTuber when I was a child. So I started doing that first. And for my writing, I've always loved to read as a child, so I naturally transitioned into writing that way. But I actually started off writing just by journaling. I struggled with anxiety a lot when I was a child, so I just started journaling things to help. And then I slowly transitioned from journaling after a few years to trying out poetry. For the name Nuage Studios, Nuage just means clouds in French. I just made that page so that I can post my creative work on there. So I mostly post my writing on there, as well as the film projects that I do, and hopefully in the future, if I create a business or something, I'll be able to use that name. So for styling inspiration, I usually focus on whatever concept we're doing. I like to think about what the people in the video are either talking about or portraying throughout the video, so that the style has to do with what the character's feeling. And I also like to implement colors a lot, so if somebody's feeling bad, then I'll put like a dark tone. In terms of my directing style, I think I like period pieces a lot, so I think that that's how I film most of my thing, with a lot of panning shots. I remember the first really film video that I tried to make was inspired by the way that Pride and Prejudice was filmed. And for my writing, it's mostly just focused on my own experience. So whenever I go through something, I sort of journal about it, and then I slowly turn it into a poem. So through my work, I mostly like to portray other people's perspectives. That's what I do through a lot of my documentary work. I did my cultural garments that was about culture. I did my fashion videos where people talked about gender and how they felt about fashion in relation to that. But then I also have my films where it's just random ideas that pop into my head. But they are derived from either things that I'm been through or concepts that I thought of. And it's just me exploring how to portray that and portray a message through those concepts. One of my favorites is called Do You Eat Alone Too? It was just one that I was inspired by a TikTok transition. But it was just me eating alone in front of the camera, and I did some poetry to write about. That was one of my favorites because I was able to talk about some personal things while also doing like a video project. I do really like my fashion series. I did What Are Men Wearing, and then I did Fashion and Femininity, which both talked about how different genders felt about fashion, and how most of us felt that there wasn't a gender when it came to that. I do like cultural garments a lot because I really appreciate other cultures, especially coming from a different country. And recently, I've been doing short films like Puppet and Gemini, and those are also some favorites because they took me out of my comfort zone. It was the first time that I've been working with full crews of people, so it was more professional, and it was like actually making a full film instead of just doing documentary stuff that I usually do on my own. For somebody starting out, I don't know if this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like you shouldn't take your ideas too seriously, because if you're a perfectionist when you're first starting out, like when you begin, you're not gonna have the biggest budget and you're not gonna have the best abilities yet because you're still learning. Like I'm still learning. So a lot of the times the ideas that you plan are not gonna look like you thought of them in your head necessarily. So I think it's about learning to love the process of creating something and not just being like really stuck to the idea and you get upset if it doesn't turn out that way, because most of the time when you're doing stuff, it's not going to turn out exactly as it is in your head. I guess I would tell myself to think a little bit more highly of my work, because since I started off and I really didn't know anything about film, I was a little bit not insecure, but since I wasn't sure what I was doing, I feel like I didn't value like my abilities as much. And that definitely, like, if you do that, then people are gonna take advantage of it a little bit. So it's important to know your abilities and respect yourself in that way, that when you're working with other people, you know what you know. Yeah. So for Co, when I was helping Vision do the film, um, it was mostly like vision boarding a lot. So I was on Pinterest because since Jan explained the idea to me, I was able to understand the concept. So then I was able to visualize it, and I put a bunch of Pinterest boards together for that. But I think that for the styling, I was actually inspired by Black Swan because I had just watched it. And in the movie, she switches the color of her outfits throughout, like her emotions changing. So I did that for all of the characters, I think. They all had different colored outfits depending on the mood of the scene. That was definitely an inspiration. And then we had other films, like there was Her and stuff like that we used for art direction, as well as my own things. So I guess it was inspired by my art direction from the past before too. I am working on editing my new short film, Gemini, that will hopefully be out soon. And hopefully it will be on some film festivals. But other than that, I am gonna take like a month or two to take a break because I feel like you gotta, when you're working on film, it takes a lot out of you, and it's important to learn to balance that and take a break in between because otherwise it's very exhausting and it definitely takes a toll. So yeah.